10 spine-chilling small-town horrors, undiscovered secrets that terrify and haunt forever. Claire thought she was leaving behind chaos when she traded the city's cacophony for the quiet of Maple Hollow. Yet, she soon discovered a nagging sense of dread lurking just beneath the surface of this postcard-perfect town. Jake, her young son, seemed to sense it too. The moments when the laughter of children fell eerily silent at her approach or the way neighbors exchanged sidelong glances made her heart race with fear. Was the comfort of freshly brewed coffee and friendly faces masking something sinister? Conversations halted abruptly when she entered the local diner, the atmosphere tense. "Did you hear about the Johnsons?" one of the waitresses whispered, her eyes darting nervously. Claire couldn't help but lean in closer. "They just vanished one night. Left everything behind." Claire scoffed initially, blaming it on small-town folklore. But as nights stretched on and her nightly shifts dragged, she couldn't shake a feeling that something was undeniably off. Jake's newfound friendship with Derek, however, was troubling. Derek was unlike any child she had encountered. His bright smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "I can see what you're thinking," he claimed with an intoxicating eeriness that made Claire's skin crawl. He convinced Jake to sneak out after dark, luring him with promises of secret games. When she spotted them through the window giggling in the moonlight, a chill enveloped her. She felt the weight of some dark past clutching at her. One stormy night during her graveyard shift, the diner flickered under intermittent fluorescent lights like a horror movie set. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was Jake. "Mom. Derek's at the window. He's staring at me." Panic crashed over Claire like frigid water. Thunder roared outside, a wild symphony that only heightened her fear. She bolted from her stool, adrenaline surging through her as she raced home. The rain slammed against the pavement like a funeral dirge. As she neared her house, the friendly wave of Mrs. Thompson next door twisted into a menacing grin. "He's special," Mrs. Thompson cooed, eyes glinting unnaturally. A cold sweat dripped down Claire's spine. Something felt incredibly wrong. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Claire's heart raced as she flung open her front door. Shadows morphed into grotesque figures leering at her from the corners of the dimly lit room. The friendly sounds that once lured her into a sense of community now surrounded her with an oppressive weight. Jake's laughter echoed hauntingly from a distance, mingling with the ominous whispers that seemed to seep through the walls. With a sense of lurking terror, she remembered the urban legends of families disappearing, tales whispered between shuttered curtains. As she stumbled towards Jake's room, memories of the dilapidated schoolhouse at the edge of town surfaced, stories of secrets, curses, and an ancient spirit waiting. If the town whispered truths, what horror awaited her when she sought them out? That laughter again. It was soft yet icy. Claire stood frozen, a fraying thread of her world threatening to snap as she realized that the true horror of Maple Hollow was not the disappearances, but the ever-looming betrayal hiding behind friendly faces. As the wind howled and shadows danced around her, she wondered, was escaping the town even an option now, or had she unwittingly stepped into something much darker than she ever imagined? The air thickened as Claire stepped deeper into the house, each creak of the floorboards resonating like a warning. Jake's laughter was no longer comforting, it felt like a siren's call beckoning her toward the abyss. What was happening? The walls seemed to pulse, absorbing the very essence of dread emanating from her thoughts. "Jake!" she called, her voice echoing in the empty spaces like a ghost haunting its own grave. Silence swallowed her words. She crept down the dim hallway, resolved to pull her son back from whatever chill of darkness had wrapped around him. She reached Jake's door, half closed, revealing a sliver of shadow within. With trembling hands, she pushed it open, heart hammering in her chest. The room was empty. The bed was made, untouched. Panic unfurled inside her like a coiling serpent. Where could he be? The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. Shadows piled in corners, dancing at the edges of her vision. She strained to hear any sound, any sign of her son. The oppressive quiet teased her sanity. Then, a soft giggle danced through the air, an echo of innocence turned sinister. It drifted from the living room, slicing through the silence like a knife. Claire rushed towards the sound, her breath hitching in her throat as dread clawed at her thoughts. Was it Jake? Or was it Derek, luring him deeper into something she couldn't understand? As she neared the living room, the temperature dropped. A chill gripped her, wrapping around her heart. She could see two shadows flickering against the wall, one smaller and the other sleek, almost serpentine. A chill ran down her spine. Her pulse quickened, and she hesitated, courage battling sheer terror. "Jake?" she called, forcing her voice to stay steady despite the apprehension gnawing at her insides. The giggling ceased. It was replaced by a heavy silence that felt alive, too thick to breathe. Claire pushed back the fear, pressing into the room. The soft glow of the television illuminated the space, but the images were blurred, distorted. Her stomach knotted as she stepped closer, and then she saw him, Jake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, his chin rested on his fist, staring blankly at the screen. Next to him, Derek leaned with an unnerving grin, eyes glimmering in the half-light. Claire's heart dropped. Something was profoundly wrong. "Derek, you need to go home," Claire said, her voice sharper than intended. Derek's smile widened, the glow of the screen casting eerie shapes across his face. "But we're just playing," Jake mumbled, seemingly entranced. Claire's heart raced, feelings of fear coursing through her. It was as if they were caught in a trance, a sick game orchestrated beyond her comprehension. Suddenly, the static from the television crackled loudly before a piercing voice emerged, distorted and chilling. "They are waiting." The word seemed to pulse, reverberating through the room, through Claire's very bones. "Get away from him!" Claire shouted, lunging forward. In that instant, the screen flickered, revealing distorted faces horrifying and skeletal, their mouths agape in silent screams. The room grew colder still, as if every breath Claire took was being stolen by unseen forces. Derek's laughter pierced the air, chilling Claire to the core. "He can see them, just like me." The twisted delight in his eyes sent fear spiraling through her. She grabbed Jake's arm, icy and unyielding. "Wake up, Jake," she begged, shaking him. A spark of recognition flickered in his eyes, but it was quickly swallowed by the haze. Suddenly, the lights flickered wildly, and she felt a force slam against her, a punch of cold, disembodied dread that sent her staggering back. The laughter morphed into a cacophony of whispers, all calling out her name, shoving back the darkness threatening to envelop her mind. Claire clutched Jake with one hand while the other reached out to push the door closed, trapping Derek's malevolence outside. But the whispers grew louder, a clamoring tide that threatened to pull her under. "Mommy?" Jake's voice was small, a flicker of light in the darkness. "But..." Claire barely had time to respond before Derek's figure loomed closer, eyes glinting in the chaos, as the whispers crescendoed, drowning out all rational thought. What had she awoken? As the darkness threatened to consume them, Claire's gut twisted with fear. The town had secrets she was yet to unearth, and they were hungry. With the weight of impending doom hanging over her, Claire knew she had to act fast. But as she scanned the room, desperate for a way out, she noticed something moving behind the curtains. Something waiting. Now that she had put her son at risk, could she really escape the horrors of Maple Hollow, or would it claim them both? The shadows danced eagerly as Claire's heart raced. The flickering lights cast ghostly silhouettes on the walls, and for a moment, she hesitated. The whispers wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket, clawing at her sanity. She could no longer discern where the laughter ended and the whispers began. "Jake, hold on tight," she shouted, dragging him to his feet. His gaze was still distant, but now there was a hint of awareness. Derek's shadow loomed closer, no longer just a figure but an embodiment of something warped. "You can't take him," Claire screamed, feeling that cold, merciless grip pressing against her mind. With one swift motion, Claire shoved Jake behind her. He was her priority. The world outside this room seemed to fade into nothingness. The curtains rustled, and a dark shape slithered closer, trying to push through the concealing fabric. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Stay back." She stepped towards the window, determined to face whatever nightmare awaited. Her feet slid on the wooden floor, slick with an unidentifiable chill that made her skin crawl. Derek's eyes glinted with mischief, but his voice held an unsettling calmness. "We're just playing, Claire." They love to play. She took a breath, willing every single ounce of courage to fill her lungs. Her eyes darted back and forth between Jake and Derek. "No more games. We're leaving." But as she turned her back to Derek, the whispers grew louder, echoing with promises and taunts. They surged around her, stealing her breath. "Join us at LLB Fun." Each word pierced through her resolve, muting her thoughts. Their presence was intoxicating, an inviting abyss that beckoned her with sinister allure. She shook her head violently, fighting against the spell they wove in her mind. "You're not real. You can't have him." And then the curtains burst open, revealing a shape that made Claire stumble back. A silhouette, grotesquely long and twisted, emerged, its skin a patchwork of shadows. Witching eyes gleamed in the dim light. Her heart threatened to burst from her chest as a chorus of ghostly laughter erupted all around her. "Mommy!" Jake whimpered, pulling at Claire's sleeve. She felt his small, trembling hand beside her, grounding her amidst the chaos. The remaining shimmer of her boy's innocence cracked through the darkness, threatening to consume them whole. "Grab my hand, Jake." The boy lunged, but Derek intercepted, fast as a snake, gathering Jake's wrist in a grip that seemed to sap the warmth from the air. "He wants to stay, Claire." The shadows behind Derek pulsed, eagerness radiating from the creeping, dark energy that filled the room. But more than fear, a savage rage boiled inside Claire. She had to protect her son. She had to wake him. "No!" she cried, lunging forward. Jake's gaze flickered, an unmistakable recognition sparking behind those frightened eyes. With a desperate surge of strength, Claire wrenched Jake away from Derek's grasp. But a blinding flash erupted from the television. Spiraling faces crashed through the screen like waves of horrifying reality, pulling them back toward the suffocating void. "Run, Jake! Now!" Terror surged anew. The whispers howled, the shadows lunged. There was no time to think, only the dizzying instinct to push them through the doorway behind her. "Mommy, what's happening?" Jake cried, eyes wide with a growing panic. "Just keep running," she shouted. They dashed down the hall, panting, the taunts and laughter chasing them. She could feel the darkness closing in at her back. Then came an explosion of darkness as the door slammed shut behind them. They were plunged into an inky abyss, the air thick with despair. Had they escaped? Or only found themselves trapped deeper in Maple Hollow's suffocating grip? Claire spun around to find the walls closing in, shadows creeping back from every direction, eyeing them hungrily. There had to be a way out, but what awaited them beyond the matter pressing at their backs? With her mind racing, she caught a glimpse of a door, faintly illuminated at the end of the hallway. A flicker of hope, or another trap? Claire turned to Jake, heart pounding louder than the whispers. "Can you trust me? Can we make it?" But before she could hear his answer, Derek's laughter echoed from the shadows, mocking and sinister. "It's not over yet." Gripping Jake's hand tighter, Claire took a step forward, ready to face whatever nightmare lay ahead. Would they escape, or would they fall into a darkness far worse than before? The corridor felt endless. Claire pressed on, dragging Jake behind her, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The light from the distant door glimmered like a fallen star, but shadows lurked at every corner, stretching and twisting, taunting her with unseen threats. "Mommy, I'm scared." Jake's voice trembled, each word a tiny echo of the fear clawing at her spine. She turned to him, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack under the weight of their terror. "Just a little further, Jake. I promise we'll get out." But the words felt hollow. How could she promise anything when the suffocating darkness kept encroaching? The whispers wrapped around her mind again, a suffocating net of sinister promises. "Just give in, it's easier." Claire shook her head, trying to clear the fog. She focused on Jake's small form, the trust in his wide eyes. They had to keep moving. Whatever it was that clung to the edges of reality, they couldn't let it win. She glanced over her shoulder, dread pooling in her stomach. There was nothing but darkness, yet she felt it. Something was right there, watching. "Jake! Keep your eyes forward." The child nodded, fear flashing but determination bubbling beneath. A good sign. She led him toward the glow, each step a desperate bid for freedom. The atmosphere grew heavier, the darkness alive, writhing like a beast at their backs. A sudden crash echoed from behind them, a displaced shadow sending a shiver down Claire's spine. "Run!" she urged, and they lunged forward, feet pounding against the floor, the rhythm a mantra keeping their fears at bay. Ahead, the door's handle gleamed like salvation. They reached it, Claire's heart thundering in rhythm with her terror. She turned the handle, thrown off balance by the force of their momentum. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room that smelled of decay and forgotten anguish. What lay inside? The flicker of a light bulb overhead illuminated a circle of peeling wallpaper, revealing images of happier times, children playing, yet the atmosphere felt tainted. "Look out!" Jake shouted, flinging his arm out. A shadow lunged toward them from the corner of the room, its shape vaguely human yet deeply twisted. Claire felt icy dread freeze her veins as it shrieked, a sound heavy with ages of torment. "No!" she managed, pushing Jake behind her again, instinct and fear surging through her. The shadow paused, hesitating as if gauging the strength of her resolve. "Don't listen to her. Join us instead." It hissed, the voice a twisted echo of Derek's. Claire struggled to keep her eyes on it, aware that turning her back might seal their fate. "Jake, we need to find another way. Stay close." Another shadow emerged at her side, then another. They swept like smoke, circling, seeking to pull them into a web spun from the whispers of despair. The whispers clawed at her mind, tugging her to join their dark realm, to become a part of the horror rather than resisting. "Mommy, please," Jake whimpered. The loneliness in his voice struck her like a punch. "My love for you is stronger." Claire screamed into the dark, searching for strength. She grabbed Jake's hand tightly, squeezing until she felt his small fingers wrap around hers. "Together!" she yelled, desperation igniting a flicker of hope. They charged into the room, weaving between the shadows that lashed out like tendrils hungry for warmth. And then the backdrop of laughter faded for a second, replaced by a pulsing silence, heavy and intoxicating. The shadows fell back, regrouping, snarling with bitter disappointment. Heart racing, Claire spotted a small window in the far wall, just above ground level. "We can get out. Climb." But before they could move, the shadows surged forward, mouths agape, howling fiercely. "Stop!" she cried out, pushing Jake ahead of her. Her body ached, dread crawling under her skin, but she couldn't back down. They needed to escape, needed to break free. "Faster, Jake. We're almost there." As they bolted towards the window, the darkness writhed, coiling around them in a violent frenzy. Would they transcend the grasp of this abyss, or would this be their doom? The window loomed close, beckoning. But the shadows lunged again, heedless of the certainty that loomed just beyond. As Claire reached for the window, a hand, a grotesque apparition gripped her ankle, pulling her down. "Mommy!" Jake shrieked, eyes wide and terror-stricken. "Climb!" Claire bellowed. The boy hesitated, dread pulling at him like a weight. "Mommy!" With one last desperate heave, Claire fought against the dark. She was determined not just to survive but to protect. But as the shadows tightened their chokehold, she felt the tendrils of despair curling around her throat. What price would they pay for freedom? Would they be consumed by the insatiable darkness? "Hold on, Jake!" she cried, desperation spilling into her voice. Corrupted shadows flickered, and then, everything went dark. The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating void where time ceased to exist. Claire felt her heart racing as if it were trying to break free from her chest. Panic surged through her veins, and the grip on her ankle tightened, pulling her down into the depths of despair. She gasped, struggling against the unseen force. "Mommy! Don't leave me!" Jake's voice pierced the silence, an arrow of fear that struck directly at her core. The sound fueled her determination. With a primal scream, she clawed at the grip that held her. "Jake, go! Please!" The words echoed, desperate and raw, a plea wrapped in urgency. She could feel his hesitation, the way he stood frozen at the threshold of escape. "No! I won't leave you." His defiance burned bright, but the shadows were relentless, merging into a mass of chaos. The room pulsed with an eerie fog, shadows crawling along the walls like a living entity. Each groan and scrape reverberated like the tolling of a bell. Death approaching, waiting just outside the veil of despair. With another instinctive lurch, Claire managed to loosen the grip on her ankle, but it came at a cost. She felt herself sliding, the jaws of darkness gaping wide, ready to consume. "I can't hold on." The words crawled from her throat, raw and fearful. She glanced back at Jake, tears glittering in his wide eyes, reflecting endless horror. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice catching in the stagnant air, thick with dread. "Climb!" she yelled, with a surge of strength. "Climb!" Jake's hands shook as he reached for the window frame, his small fingers finding grip. He started to scramble up, fighting against the shadows that crept closer, hungry for their warmth. "No! Don't look back, just climb." Claire felt the weight of the entangled shadows tug at her, grasping around her arm, pulling her down like stones. With every ounce of her being, Claire pushed against the terror, tears streaming down her face. "I want to let you go." Jake scrambled higher, determination etched across his tiny face, but the shadows surged through the room, dark mist coiling around his feet. With a last desperate lunge, he reached for her. "Jake! I'm right here." Her heart pounded like a war drum, thrumming in time with fear. As she stretched, the visceral pull of the darkness yanked her down. She felt the cold sinking into her bones, reaching for her very soul. Then, with a powerful flex, she twisted free. The shadows screamed, enraged, and she lunged toward her son. Jake looked down, his eyes wide with terror as he hung onto the window ledge. "Grab my hand." He hesitated, glancing back at the darkness, the fear consuming his resolve. "Please, Jake!" Claire screamed, fear surging anew. "You can't let it win." In that moment, she saw it. Flickering behind him, shadows whispered promises that twisted around like serpents, offering safety if he would only join. "No! You're stronger than it. You're my little warrior." Her words cut through the fog. Jake's determination ignited again. He reached for her, and in a frantic burst, he lunged down. Their fingers met, time slowed. The shadows shrieked with fury, lunging forward to claim them. The light from the outside washed over them, an ethereal glow in the chaos. "Now! Pull!" Claire shouted, feeling his grip tighten around hers. With one final heave, she felt them break free as the shadows recoiled, howling in rage. They tumbled through the window, landing hard on the cold ground outside. The air was sharp and frigid, crisp with the scent of earth and night. But behind them, the house seemed to shudder, expelling the shadows as they writhed like wounded creatures. Jake scrambled to his feet, panic still etched in his features. What was that? I don't know. Claire's voice quivered as she pulled him close, their hearts racing together. But we need to keep moving. As they stood together, the darkness loomed behind them, watching, waiting, and a whisper danced through the wind. This isn't over. Claire's heart sank as something flickered in the corner of her eye. A shadow darted into the trees, darker than the night, and an icy dread clutched at her. They weren't safe yet. Come on, Jake. We have to run. What fresh terrors awaited them in the night? Could they really escape the grasp of what hunted them? Running felt like a nightmare, each step heavy with the weight of the darkness chasing them. The night air sliced through Claire's lungs as she sprinted, dragging Jake along with her. The ground beneath their feet was rough, roots and stones stabbing at their soles, but they pushed on, driven by sheer instinct. What if it comes back? Jake's voice broke through the frantic rhythm of their escape, high-pitched and laced with childlike fear. It can't hurt us if we don't stop. The words tumbled out, raw and desperate. Claire forced herself to focus on the path ahead, even as her heart raced and panic clawed at her throat. The trees loomed around them, twisted and gnarled, their branches like skeletal fingers scraping against the starless sky. The darkness felt alive, a breathing entity that followed closely, whispering in a language no ear could understand. A cold breeze rushed past, sending shivers down Claire's spine, as if the very air mourned their plight. Suddenly, a hollow sound echoed behind them, like someone or something crashing through the underbrush. It was closer now. Fear gripped her stomach, a tightening vice. She glanced back for just a moment, and in that fleeting instant, she caught a glimpse of a shadow with a form that flickered like candlelight, grotesquely shifting as it lurked between the trees. Faster! She urged, her voice barely a whisper, filled with dread. Jake's small legs pumped harder, but she could feel his waning energy, the struggles of a child overwhelmed by the night. What's wrong, Mommy? He gasped, looking up at her, his wide eyes searching for answers. Just keep running. She wanted to scream, but the terror was too overwhelming. It clawed at her throat, clawed at her sanity. They burst through the trees into a small clearing. The moon hung high, casting a ghostly light over a forgotten graveyard, the headstones leaning at eerie angles, like anguished souls reaching for the sky. Claire's heart sank in recognition, the graveyard from the old tales, where the townsfolk whispered about the restless spirits bound to the earth, never granted peace. They're trying to claim us, she whispered, trembling. Jake was still breathing fast, but she could see his face twist in confusion. Suddenly, the shadows from the woods surged into the clearing, shifting and coiling around the gravestones. They converged, urging forth a collective wail, a sound that chilled Claire to her very core. Get behind me! Claire shouted, positioning herself in front of Jake, heart pounding. She felt so small, so vulnerable. The shadows swirled, collapsing into a larger entity. A figure formed from the darkness itself, eyes like burning coals soaking in malice. Your souls are bound to me, it hissed, voice low and vile, like the whisper of a dying wind. You belong to the night. Terror surged through Claire like wildfire, and she held Jake closer, squeezing her eyes shut for a moment. It couldn't have a hold on them. Not here. It wasn't just a house, it was a prison woven into the fabric of the town, aching with hidden secrets. Please, Jake whimpered, clutching her leg. Not now, Jake. Claire snapped, urgency flooding her voice as she scanned the clearing for any possible escape. Behind her, the shadows darkened, their menace thickening the air around them. With a sudden, desperate spark, Claire remembered the town's lore. There was supposed to be a way to break the curse, to condemn whatever haunted those gravestones. We have to free them. She shouted, hope igniting against the suffocating gloom. Find a name. A name on a tombstone. Jake's eyes shot around the clearing, even as Claire stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness. If they're bound to it, maybe we can undo this. The shadows were coiling tighter when Jake pointed shakily at an old, crumbling headstone. That one. It's glowing. Heart racing, Claire sprinted toward it, the aura of its ethereal light piercing through the suffocating veil as she fumbled for the names engraved in stone. But the shadows howled louder, and the grasping darkness lunged toward them. Stay close. Claire yelled, knowing this was their last chance, their lifeline in the abyss. As she reached the headstone, she gasped at the name, familiar yet somehow monstrous. It's not just here, it's in our blood. The shadows screeched, a deafening cacophony that sent a jolt of ice through her veins. She turned back to Jake, a look of determination flickering through her panic. We can't let them win. But as they stood there, the shadows began to ripple, and the night warped around them. Was this truly the end, or was there a hidden truth yet to be uncovered? With time slipping away, Claire clutched Jake's hand tightly, steeling herself for the fight of their lives. What had they stumbled upon, and could they truly shatter the nights that never ended? A heavy silence draped over the clearing, shadow figures twisting in anticipation something was about to break. But what? As Claire stood before the glowing headstone, something about the name etched into the weathered stone sent her pulse racing. It was a name she had known from childhood stories, whispered among fearful adults, a name that echoed through the ages, wrapped in darkness. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was calling out to her, beckoning her closer. Mommy, what's happening? Jake pulled on her sleeve, panic rising in his voice. I don't know. Claire stammered, eyes darting to the shadows that writhed impatiently, eager to consume them. But we have to try. The air thickened, suffocating. Shadows lunged for them, a wave of darkness that threatened to swallow everything whole. Claire hugged Jake tightly, her breath coming in short gasps. The name on the headstone glowed ever brighter, illuminating the faces of countless spirits trapped in that desolate graveyard. Please, let us be free, they whispered, voices a haunting blend of sorrow and despair. Claire shivered. This was the place where their anguish resided, the anchor of all the terror that festered in the town. Jake! She shouted, trying to be heard above the tormenting wails, look for more names. We need their stories. Jake hesitated but then squeezed his eyes shut, searching desperately through the darkened graves, the weight of it all hanging heavy in the air. There's another one. He shouted, pointing to a nearby gravestone that shimmered like glass, but before they could reach it, the shadows surged, clawing and grasping, gnashing with ferocity. You will not escape. The darkness hissed, the voices merging into a single entity, malevolent and ancient. It surged forward, hungry. We don't belong to you. Claire shouted defiantly, stepping out from behind her son. We release the curse. With those words, the night seemed to tremble, and the air rippled again with an electric jolt. The ground beneath them pulsed like a heartbeat, as if the grave itself were alive, responding to Claire's plea. Mommy! Jake cried, tears rolling down his cheeks, his small hands digging into her arm as he held on tightly. Ignoring the grip of fear that twisted her insides, Claire lunged toward the glowing headstone. I know you're trapped, but we can help. She could almost make out the names etched deeply into the stone, swirling like smoke. There was one name, her grandmother's. The realization crashed over her like cold waves. Claire shivered, memories of childhood visits flooding back, stories of the town's dark past weaving through her mind. Take it. Take the name. Claire shouted to the shadows, an act of desperation, hoping to bind them to the past instead. Take your vengeance out on me. Let him go. As she cried out, the shadows shrieked, recoiling as if struck. Pain rippled through the darkness, and the stones of the graveyard trembled. The spectral energies swirled violently, twisting into a cyclone that threatened to pull everything apart. Claire, don't. Jake screamed, his little hands tightening around her waist, but she could feel the pulse of the name through her blood, the very essence of who she was. Her grandmother had fought for peace, perhaps it was her turn to carry that torch. I'm not afraid. She shouted defiantly to the entity looming before them. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the headstone. The shadows wavered, their form flickering in the face of such brilliance. Claire shielded her eyes as the lights danced, filling the clearing with a warmth that pushed back the cold. "Your sacrifice will be in vain." The darkness roared, but fear laced its words. "Is it?" Claire challenged. "What if it is the very thing that frees you?" The shadows twisted and writhed in agony, and Claire felt the energy shift. Desperation turned to resolve as she braced herself for what came next. The ground trembled beneath her feet, splitting open. Jake's terrified eyes met hers. "Mommy, please." As the shadows collapsed, the old graves began to glow, their words unraveling beneath the weight of the confrontation. Claire could only hold on to hope as the light burst into a new reality. In the distance, a faint cry echoed, a voice that felt achingly familiar. Claire, it was her grandmother, calling out through the veil. The ground shook violently as Claire and Jake were enveloped in light, blinding and all-consuming, but just as quickly as it began, it fell to a haunting silence, time froze, and reality splintered. Claire screamed, not knowing if they were being pulled into salvation or despair. In that eternal moment, fear gripped her heart once more, a pulse of darkness beating in tandem with the light, and then, nothing. Only a deep, echoing void. A flicker returned like the first breath of dawn. But what awaited them on the other side? Were they trapped forever, or had they broken the chains of darkness? As Claire and Jake stood at the cusp of an unknown world, the shadows lingered in the corners of their minds, whispering secrets of a horror yet to come. Light slowly dimmed, replaced by faint outlines of familiar shapes. Claire blinked against the brightness, disoriented. She felt Jake tugging at her hand, his grip trembling. Where were they? The graveyard. The shadows. Had they escaped or fallen deeper into the darkness? As her vision cleared, Claire gasped. They stood in the same graveyard, but everything felt wrong. The headstone still glowed, but the vibrant light had twisted into an unsettling crimson hue. Shadows darted like flickering flames, hissing at the edges of her vision. It was the same place but steeped in a thick layer of dread. "Mommy," Jake whimpered, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with confusion. "This doesn't look like home." "No, it doesn't," Claire murmured, scanning the area. The graveyard had transformed. Bones of the past jutted from the soil like splintered teeth, and the air smelled of decay. The spirits were gone, leaving only echoes of their anguish. Just ahead, she caught a glimpse of a weathered path of stones leading away from the graves. Claire didn't want to, but she felt the call. "We should follow it," she told Jake, trying to sound braver than she felt. As they stepped onto the path, the shadows contorted above, tumbling and swirling as if agitated. "Get back!" Claire shouted, but the darkness wasn't ready to relent. It seemed to thicken, folding in on itself, eager to eclipse their every movement. Barely keeping her panic in check, they moved forward with tentative steps. Each stone felt hot beneath her shoes, as though they had been warmed by the despair lingering in the air. The glow of blood-red light flickered behind them, shadows tailing closely. "You'll never find peace." A shrill voice echoed, cutting through the thick silence. A figure emerged from the darkness, a wraith with hollow eyes, stretched thin and wailing. "You belong to us now." Claire instinctively crouched down, shielding Jake with her body. "Stay behind me," she commanded, her heart racing against fear. She could feel the chill in the air squeezing her lungs, as if the specter itself sought to suck the breath from her. "Mommy!" Jake cried, his voice trembling. "What does it want?" In her gut, Claire sensed it was feeding off their fear, drawing strength from the dread they felt. "We will not be yours," Claire shouted, unsure if her words could cut through the terror. The specter laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the graveyard. "We are your ancestors. We are all that you fear." With newfound determination, Claire took a step forward, clenching her fists. In that moment, memories of her grandmother surged in her mind, the warmth of her hugs, the strength she had always shown. "We are more than you," she yelled, her voice ignited with resolve. "We honor your memory, but we refuse your chains." Red light flared, momentarily brightening the darkness, and the specter shrank back, hissing. The change in Claire was palpable, fear was shape-shifting into defiance. "Make peace with us or live in torment," its voice retorted, but Claire pressed on, feeling a weight lift from her. Jake clutched her hand tighter, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Mommy, what are you doing?" "I'm fighting back," Claire replied, breath coming steadier. "I want to let them take you." They moved deeper into the cemetery, stepping away from the spiraling shadows. Claire felt power course through her, a spark igniting purpose. Suddenly, she halted before a cluster of gravestones, more names dancing in that faint, eerie light. "Look, Jake. They want to be remembered." As she reached for the headstone to the left, a cold gust whipped through, and a familiar voice hissed, "You are making a perilous choice." Claire spun around, heart hammering. "What do you know? What have you taken from us?" Before her stood the visage of her grandmother, pale and luminous yet tinged with sorrow. "To remember them means to release them," she whispered, her voice both a warning and a plea. "But some shall never be freed." Claire's heart sank, the implications were horrific. "What do you mean?" But the specter grinned as darkness curled thicker around her. "You'll learn soon enough," Jake squeaked, pointing toward the gravestones. "Look, Mommy. There are more of them." Realization struck like a lightning bolt. This was just the beginning of their nightmare. A storm brewed behind them, shadows bulked larger, hungrier. Just as the ground shook violently, threatening to pull them under, Claire bolstered herself. They needed to find the stories and the names. They needed to confront every spirit crying for release, no matter the cost. What stood ahead could either shatter them or bound them forever. Would they master the darkness, or would it devour them whole? The shadows had secrets, and Claire was determined to uncover them before it was too late. The howling winds carried a mournful melody, swirling through the gravestones like a lament. Claire turned back toward Jake, who seemed entranced, his wide eyes reflecting both terror and wonder. "Mommy," he whispered, clutching her hand, "what if they don't want to be remembered?" "Then we have to listen," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady even as the ground underfoot trembled. The crimson glow intensified, warping the ancient engravings on the headstones. Voices fluttered around them like whispers in a crowded room, each one more desperate than the last. She stepped toward the nearest gravestone, one that trembled slightly under her touch. The name was barely visible, obscured by dirt and dread. She wiped away the grime and revealed the name, Lillian Crow. A chill traced its way up her spine. "Lillian. Are you here?" she called out, her heart racing. "We mean you no harm." The air felt charged, the shadows momentarily recoiled. Then, laughter swelled around them, children's laughter mixed with anguished pleas. Claire's heartbeat quickened. "Stay close, Jake," she warned, but he was already inching forward, drawn in like a moth to a flame. Suddenly, an unseen force yanked Claire back, slamming her to the ground. The stones beneath her felt scorching, and for a moment, she thought she would burn. She looked up and met the gaze of the wraith, now closer, its features grotesque yet oddly familiar. "Foolish girl," it screeched, its voice echoing off the stones. "You play with forces beyond your understanding." Dark tendrils of shadow flicked out like snakes, searching. "Get away from her," Jake shouted, stepping in front of Claire, his small frame trembling but resolute. "You can't hurt her. You can't." Claire's heart swelled with pride, but the specter only sneered, weaving its twisted form closer. "You think your bravery protects you?" it hissed. The living always confuse courage with despair. Without thinking, Claire grabbed Jake's hand, pulling him alongside her as they scrambled to their feet. They ran down the path, remnants of shadows clawing at their heels. They needed to find stories, names, something to connect with in this dark tapestry. "Mommy, I don't want to remember," Jake cried out, his voice cracking with fear. "What if they're angry? They want to be heard." She yelled back, feeling the weight of those lost souls pressing against her chest. Each name they touched could also be a way out, but which names would grant them reprieve? They veered sideways through looming shadows until they reached a clearing, where a gargantuan oak tree stood domineeringly. The trunk was split, revealing a dark space that beckoned them like an open mouth. A faint light radiated from deep within, warm yet unsettling. "Should we go in?" Jake whispered, fear creeping into every syllable. "No," Claire said, thinking rapidly. "We can't hide. We need to confront whatever awaits us. It's the only way." As they approached the tree, the air chilled, thick with sorrow and dread. "You should leave," a voice drifted through the leaves, resonating with sympathy. "They don't wish to harm you, they only long for remembrance." "But how?" Claire shouted into the gloom. "Free me," the voice faded, lost in a mournful sigh of the wind. Just then, Claire spotted something glinting in the roots, something shiny and circular. She knelt down to inspect it, a pendant shining with an ethereal glow that pulsed gently. It was covered in intricate designs like a seal, but so much more. "Mommy, it's pretty." Jake gasped, reaching for it. "No, Jake. Wait." Claire shouted, a cold sweat breaking out on her brow. But it was too late. With a fierce pull, Jake grasped the pendant, and a scream erupted from the depths of the tree. The ground rumbled as shadows converged toward them, swirling closer, eyes glinting with animosity. The stopping point for every lingering soul. In that instant, Claire realized this was not merely a choice of remembrance. They were about to unleash something dreadful that had been waiting for far too long. "Run!" she screamed, as the darkness surged forward, tendrils flicking through the air like hungry vipers. What had they awakened? And would they be fast enough to escape the horrors they had inadvertently released? The shadows roared, and Claire's breath hitched. The real nightmare was only just beginning. The world around them erupted in chaos. The shadows danced eagerly, thrashing against the wind as if the tree had unleashed their wrath. Claire's pulse raced like a drum in her ears, the sound of her own heartbeat pulsing adrenaline through her veins. She grabbed Jake's hand, every instinct kicking in as they stumbled backward from the approaching darkness. "Run, Jake! Run!" she yelled, pulling him with every ounce of strength in her body. The tendrils of terror spat and writhed, dark fingers clawing at the air in need of them, desperate to reassert their control. As they fled back toward the graveyard, the shadows howled, thrumming with cold anger, eager for vengeance now that their prison was weak. "You will never escape!" they cried, voices overlapping as if coming from every direction, a chorus of lost souls woven in pain. But Claire's mind raced. She could feel the pendant's warm glow in Jake's hand, pulsing with energy power they could harness. "We just have to remember," she urged, even as their surroundings shifted into darkness, trees swirling into twisted silhouettes, headstones warping like statues under duress. "It's the stories, Jake. We have to find them." They veered toward a different corner of the graveyard, where names glimmered faintly in an ethereal light, a glimmering connection to the past. Claire's heart clenched as they approached one gravestone after another, her fingers tracing the familiar names, Lillian, Thomas, Miriam, lost tales hidden beneath the weight of time. "Help us!" she shouted, grasping the edge of the glowing pendant, its power resonating with their search. Suddenly, a burst of wind knocked Claire back, and she fell hard onto the cold ground. Jake stumbled but caught himself and rushed to her side. "Mommy!" His voice quivered with worry, but Claire could see within him that subtle spark of bravery. "Together!" she gasped, forcing herself up. "We can do this. Keep holding the pendant." Clasping Jake's hand around it once more, she felt a surge of warmth wash over them. With every name they shouted, Claire and Jake drew strength from the echoes of those wronged spirits. "We remember you. We acknowledge your pain. The shadows faltered momentarily, the malevolent anger in their grasp loosening. "Remember us and release us," came a haunting harmony from the depths of the graveyard, voices intertwining in a symphony of sorrow and hope, pleading for salvation. With newfound determination, Claire turned to the apparitions swirling in darkness, thoughtlessly feeling the combined essence of desperation and trust. "There's power in your stories. Emerged from tragedy, we will break these chains." Each name they shouted resonated throughout the clearing, pulling strength from the very foundation beneath them. "Don't let those memories fade. Fight back!" Jake shouted, and the boy's defiance sent shocks through the encroaching dark entities. The wraiths hesitated, their howls mingling with uncertainty. Choosing names, Claire beckoned spirits forward. "Let us bind our strength together. You do have more than just pain, you have history. Let us share it." With every word, she could feel the barriers melting, the shadows thinning, separating from the clutches of despair. "Fight with us," Jake interjected, his innocent bravery brightening the gloom. The shadows retreated further, now flickering as if they were ink upon paper scrolling before the flames of truth. The air shifted as the storms of darkness began to dissipate, the overwhelming dread lifting. Together, they pressed on into unfathomable strength. "This is our home, the stories must survive." Claire screamed into the swirling shadows, agonizing cries morphing into whispers of acceptance. "And we will rebuild." And in that moment, the pendant shone unlike anything they had ever seen, infused with the light of those lost lives which had been captured by the darkness. Claire and Jake felt the warmth seep into their very core, courage igniting within their hearts. Light engulfed the graveyard, pushing back the shadows and exposing the deep fabric of forgotten tales that lay hidden. Shadows shrieked their final cries, dissolving into wisps of nothingness, and the air around them dazzled with shades of hope. As the darkness peeled away, Claire and Jake stood beneath a sky of resilience, where the once haunting spirits flickered in their peripheries, now free. The weight of numerous memories lay transformed, shadows flickered about them, embracing rather than taunting. Exhausted but glowing with triumph, Claire wept tears of relief as Jake clutched the pendant tightly in his small hand, the warmth of their bond brighter than the dawn breaking over Maple Hollow. They gazed at the crimson sky shifting from dark to light, haunted not by sorrow but by living memories thriving through love. "Let us go home," she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude for what remained, a place where they would not just survive, but thrive. Slowly, they turned away from the graveyard, hand in hand, ready to forge a new story out of the fragments of darkness left behind, but in the corners of their minds, the echo lingered, a promise and a warning that sometimes, the past isn't as easily separated from the future. As they walked toward the promise of a better day, Claire knew in her heart they had not only faced the shadows but had emerged into a fresh chapter of resilience, with echoes of their fragile victory guiding their way forward, forevermore. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that unfold like this one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these spine-chilling tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how Claire and Jake faced their fears. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.